What to do? What to do? What to do? What to do?
Hey friends, this is Rebecca with the Center for Natural Living, and I am pleased to have Sky Blue joining us today for the SACI Spotlight. That's the Sustainable and Autonomous Communities Initiative Spotlight. Sky is with the Fellowship for Intentional Community. I can't even think of a more prominent and well-established organization when it comes to the sustainable eco-village communities and co-op housing and just the impressive amount of information that has been created by your organization. And so thank you so much for your time, Sky.
Absolutely.
If you want to just start by introducing yourself and also speaking about the mission for the Fellowship for Intentional Community.
Sure. So my name is Sky Blue, and yes, that is my real name, and yes, my parents were hippies. I've been living in different kinds of intentional communities for basically 20 years, for basically my adult life, plus some. And that includes a rural and income sharing intentional community in Central Virginia, a student housing cooperative, a co-housing community, a urban collective household. And I've also helped with various other projects sort of on a more limited basis, eco-village startups and different sorts of things like that. And then I work as the executive director of the Fellowship for Intentional Community, which I've been doing for a little over 3 years now. And the FIC's, the FIC has kind of four different directions, or there's sort of four-pronged approach to what we do. We're about supporting communities forming and developing on the ground or established communities that need whatever sort of support, resources, networking, all of that. And then we also serve the role of trying to create a sense of cohesion amongst the movement. So looking at intentional communities as a whole network and a movement in itself, and trying to create a sense of we as a movement for intentional communities. And then the next one is putting the intentional communities movement in a larger context of the broad range of movements going on out there in different organizations that are all working towards similar values. So worker co-ops, permaculture organizations, transition town initiatives, all manner of different things. We are a member of a group called the New Economy Coalition, which I definitely recommend people check out. It's a big umbrella organization, and it really helps. It helps us put what intentional communities are doing in context of sort of a larger picture of the sort of social transformation on not just a national but a global level that we're trying to affect. And then the last prong of what we do is basically just sharing with the public about what's going on with intentional communities and trying to share the lessons that are being learned.
Wow, and it sounds like you are getting yourself very involved by actually visiting a handful of them across the country right now. Can you speak about the tour that you're on?
Yeah, so I've left my long-term home of Twin Oaks community in Central Virginia, and I am going to be doing several different road trips back and forth across the country over the course of this year, visiting different communities as I go, and hitting up different events that I'm either presenting at or helping to organize, like the National Co-Housing Conference in Portland in June, and the International Communal Studies Association Conference in upstate New York in July. The West Coast Communities Conference, which this year will be up at our Eco Village in British Columbia. There's going to be a second Southwest intercommunity retreat at Llama Foundation in New Mexico. So hitting up those different events, and then hitting up different communities as I go. So in the last few weeks, I visited Earth Haven Eco Village near Asheville, North Carolina, Koinonia Farm in Southeast Georgia, which is a 77-year-old radical Christian community that took a stand for racial equality back during Jim Crow in Georgia. I mean, they got bombed, they got shot at, they got boycotted, and they survived. And they actually ended up going on to create Habitat for Humanity. A lot of people don't know that Habitat for Humanity actually came out of an intentional community. And then I was in Jackson, Mississippi, and checking out some really interesting community organizing projects on the ground there in a community, a city that is I think over 80% African American, has some of the worst poverty that I've seen in this country. And seeing the work of trying to create land trusts and cooperative enterprises in a community where there is just so much hopelessness and so much just survival mentality, and sort of being able to see the work that they're doing under those circumstances, which in some ways is kind of the best set of circumstances, because like people don't really have anything left to lose. Like capitalism has abandoned them, you know, but at the same time, that sort of endemic hopelessness from the legacy of centuries of racism and capitalism, and it's pretty intense to be there, but it was good to see and see what they're doing there. Yeah, and then passed through a couple other places on my way, but and then today I'm on my way up to the LA Eco Village in Los Angeles, California, and really excited to check them out. I haven't been there before, and yeah, I mean, lots more to come.
So every single day, it seems like there's more and more individuals joining this movement. Like you said, it's definitely global. What do you think that it is that attracts people to this lifestyle? You sort of touched on that, where in the one area, it was almost out of necessity, but very many folks are like almost like a magnet attracted to these sort of alternative lifestyle approaches. Do you think that there's an element of like liberation or personal transformation that living in community like this, growing your own food, affords humanity?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's a way in which I think people more and more are recognizing that the problems that we are facing as humanity are global and they are systemic. So wealth inequality is related to climate change, which is related to political disenfranchisement, which is, you know, et cetera. Like it's all interconnected. And so as people are becoming more aware of these global systemic problems, they are looking more for solutions. And if you try to look for solutions on that global level, like you're just going to get real overwhelmed real fast. Not that we don't ultimately need to figure that out, but I think where we can start, where it makes more sense for people to start, is more on a human scale. And so that's a lot what intentional communities are providing. They're looking at holistic solutions that are more human scaled, where we're still human, we're still dealing with everything that the whole world is dealing with, but just on a level that we can address it in a more intentional kind of way, bringing more consciousness in. And I think, you know, the extent to which intentional communities, just by their nature of being relationship focused and being about sharing, there are obvious social benefits there. There are obvious economic benefits. Like basically, you know, if nothing else, sharing is just cheaper. And then there's obvious ecological benefits. And those are naturally intertwined. Like by design, those are sort of holistically integrated into the design of intentional communities. And I think especially younger people these days more intuitively get that this is all connected and that the solutions that we need are interconnected in that way. And so, yeah, I mean, and I think, and again, you know, the benefit of living in community is, you know, you kind of can't avoid a certain amount of personal transformation in the process of that. You know, conflict is inevitable. Like we're human beings, right?
Yes.
And so you're gonna have some personal growth whether you like it or not. And ideally you embrace it, because that's where you get the most out of it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think too, there's probably something to be said for eating food straight from the garden and cooking with other people, and just like maybe not a slower lifestyle, but an escape from the matrix or the 9 to 5 is offered as well. And I think that's something that is really special in the eco villages that I've visited.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so you're just going to be all over the place. I want to make sure that we share your work far and wide. I also was hoping that we could touch on the directory that's offered through Fellowship for Intentional Community. I use this in presentations and also promote it because it's so informative. If you could just kind of speak to how someone, maybe I can even screen share to the website, but how many listings are there? Like very in depth, that shows the spiritual beliefs, the dietary restrictions. How can someone use the directory to their advantage?
Yeah, the online directory, ic.org/directory, or just go to ic.org and look for the directory button up in the top left corner. You know, there's a couple different ways, as you can see, to look at this. I think both the map of communities, as well as the advanced search function are two of the best ways. So if you have a clear sense of where you're looking or and for community, then you can look at the map and you can, it's just like any sort of Google Maps sort of thing. You can scroll in and out and they'll show you where the pins are. And then you can click on the pins to find out more about a particular place. And then the advanced search function allows you to search by the wide range of different data fields that we collect when people fill out their listing form, which, like as you mentioned, includes if they have a spiritual persuasion, how big they are, where they are, what kind of decision-making structure they use, just a wide range of different things. And also it shows you whether they're established or forming, when they were formed, whether they're open to visitors or new members. So wide range of things. So, and then you can, once you get to a particular listing, like you're looking at now, you can see all of the different information that they've provided to give you a sense of what they're doing or what they're trying to do. And so the one of the best metrics we have for for the growth of the movement over time is we periodically do a print version of the directory, and of course it started out as a print directory, and the version in 1996 that we put out had about 300 listings in it. Two versions later, in 2006, that version had 600 listings. The version two versions later that we put out in 2016 had 1,200 listings. So you can tell from that over the last 20 years, there has been an obvious growth in the movement. Right now, the directory, the online directory, has somewhere between 1,000 and 1,100 listings. And the reason why it's lower is because we go through a fairly rigorous updating process where we try to be pretty systematic and regular about making sure that any listings that, because there's a lot of dreams out there, right? Like, and like any kind of enterprise, small business, that sort of thing, a lot of intentional communities fail. Again, we're dealing with humans and human organization, and life happens. And so we try to be regular about culling data that's out of date or things that haven't worked out, so that the information that is in the directory is really going to be useful.
Yes, it's gold. I am blown away by the directory down to every single detail. It's so incredible. One thing that I am also really impressed that the Fellowship for Intentional Community offers is like all this information about legal structures. Like, I was very confused. How are all of these, like, because so many do fall apart, are they land trusts? Are they housing associations, or what is it called?
Housing co-ops?
Yes, right. So there's homeowners associations is what Earth
Right.
Haven used to be, I believe. So there's so many legal structures. Have you seen which ones work best for the communities that you visited and your experience living this lifestyle?
So, there's a lot of different aspects to forming communities like this, and especially when you're talking about having land-based communities where there's especially some kind of level of collective ownership over land, property, that sort of thing. There's a lot of different options available. And again, this is not just around, sort of legal structures, financial structures. This is around decision-making process. This is around conflict resolution, all manner of different things, how you do your membership process, how you do your labor system. And generally what I say is that, there's lots of good models out there. There's lots of options. Your group needs to figure out what's right for you. And where I think that starts is by the group getting really clear and on the same page about what is it that we want to do? Like, who are we? What is our purpose? What's our vision for a community? And the more on the same page and clear about that you can be as a group, then all these questions about which legal structure, which decision-making structure, et cetera, like, those are just going to become a lot more obvious when you start doing your research and looking at the options. So it's like, and I think so Earth Haven is an interesting example of this, where they're a 25-year-old community at this point, and they started off with one legal structure, which I think was basically just an LLC holding title to the property, and it was fairly informal in terms of how they were doing membership agreements and leaseholds around on houses and that sort of thing. And then they started running into some legal problems because the model wasn't robust enough for the complexity of what it was that was actually evolving there.
People were passing away. There
People were
wasn't
passing
a way to,
away.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, leaving and wanting to get bought out, and there just wasn't, clear enough agreements in place. And so they've now developed this structure that includes a homeowners association, which holds title to all the common land, and a non-exempt nonprofit. So it's not tax exempt by the IRS, but it's a nonprofit by the state, which essentially acts as kind of the property management company and collects fees for doing basic, major infrastructure stuff for the community as a whole. And then there are 12 neighborhoods that are either developed or in development, and each of those are organized as housing cooperatives. And so they hacked it really well. Like they just did a really good system hack and sort of pieced together this system, this collection of legal entities that will now, allow them to really, collect the fees they need to be able to manage the common property really well, while then also giving each housing cooperative, this, collective neighborhood, each of the different neighborhoods, a fair degree of autonomy in terms of how they want to develop, all within, general land use and sustainability agreements and that sort of stuff that are very beautifully posted all around this their council hall, which is this gorgeous kind of round building. And so I think, again, they changed over time, right? Like they were going for a while, they were evolving, and then they were like, oh, wait a minute, actually, now that we're getting more clear about who we are and what we're doing, we actually can see that this other legal structure is going to work better for us.
Yeah, and they adapted with time.
Exactly. So it's like, there's all sorts of best practices, there are all sorts of good, guidelines and principles, but ultimately, there's no rules. Each group is going to be unique, is going to have its own set of circumstances, and should figure out what's right for them.
Yes. Yeah. Earth Haven's fascinating. I actually visited about 2 years ago, and they said they spontaneously decentralized and found the little neighborhood pockets that were, I think, around 10 acres each, they described.
Right.
Wow. That's super cool. Okay. So one other question too on these communities is that you're living there, you ideally would be able to produce value there for not only to sustain yourself, but perhaps even to provide outward to the local economy. Are you seeing more and more cottage industry or more entrepreneurship or things popping up as you visit these communities?
Yeah, I think that is starting to come in more. I think people are starting to recognize more of a need for that, especially in the rural communities. Obviously, there's a big difference here in terms of the rural and the urban communities. If you live in a more urban area, you've got access to different jobs, work opportunities, and that sort of thing. So it's not as much of an issue. That said, urban communities do often benefit if they have some kind of collective project, which rural communities, because of them being more out in the country, the level of kind of, we'll say, isolation, just developing their community itself can be that sort of shared project that sort of really helps create a practical basis for building the relationships and building the community. So while it's not necessarily as needed from a financial perspective, urban communities, even if it's just like, kind of some volunteer or service thing that they do together regularly or something along those lines, can be super helpful. One urban community I know of a while back, which the Emma Goldman Finishing School in Seattle, for a long time they basically acted as the server hub for this website and email service called riseup.net. It was this kind of anarchist email service. It was a cool project. But in rural communities, I think, seeing a little bit more cottage industries, a little bit more support for entrepreneurship is definitely, that's definitely been more of a conversation in the movement the last couple of years. And I am starting to see more groups supporting that. Because again, people are recognizing it's like, yeah, you gotta make money somehow. And especially if you're not close enough to a place where people can go to have jobs, then it's gotta work somehow. Twin Oaks, where I lived for a long time, of course, as an income sharing community, has several large successful businesses that do provide for the community's income. And the more financially intertwined a group is, the more it kind of makes sense to have cottage industries. The more financially independent people are in a group, it's, you know, it's a little harder to kind of get that going, but you do still see like, you know, Arco Santi in Arizona has, you know, the bells that they make. And,
Yeah, they're beautiful.
yeah. So a lot of different things like that.
Oh, that's where we met
Right.
too.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
Arcosanti's wonderful. That was such a cool place to visit. They call it arcology, right? With the
Right.
architecture and the way that the structures are built. They call it a permanent construction site.
Right.
That was super inspiring.
Yeah.
You visited there on your tour, didn't you?
I was just there for a night. Yeah, I was just kind of passing through. It was less a tour stop and more just kind of a touching base. They have this year they'll have their third annual Convergence, where we met, and I'm hoping to get a little more involved with that this year and spend a little more time there before that event. I've helped arrange for Climbing Poetry to come and perform there as part of the event. But I really like what they're doing, so I'm hoping to kind of connect in with them a little bit more.
Yeah, they have a really interesting model.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time. I'd like to wrap it up by you expressing how someone can become involved or support the Fellowship for Intentional Community. I know there's a magazine. There's a way to become a monthly donor of some sort. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we definitely, you know, need support. We are a grassroots funded organization. We do not rely on any foundation support. It all comes from mission related program income or memberships, fees and donations. So yeah, pretty easy on our website to go and look in the upper right hand corner for sort of member or donate buttons, or click on the support button in the top menu bar. And you know, if you're part of a group and you're not listed in the directory, we would love to have you. So please go and fill out the listing form, which we're in the middle of doing a pretty major update to. So hopefully it will simplify things both from the listing perspective and then also from the user perspective once that all gets rolled out in a few months. And Communities Magazine, quarterly publication, which is available digitally by donation, so you don't have to pay anything for the digital version when it comes out. But if you want the hard copy, then you can pay a little bit for that. And then we run an online bookstore, which is a pretty carefully curated selection of materials that are going to be particularly useful for all kinds of community building. So that's definitely a place and that it is useful for people and is a way to support what we're doing as well. Yeah, and we're constantly just in touch with people. People reach out to us with inquiries asking about different kind of technical assistance sort of details about how to start communities. One group reached out recently and was like, hey, we want to really try and create an intergenerational community, and we're trying to figure out what makes sense in terms of architecture and sort of demographic spread and that sort of thing. And so, kind of batted back and forth a couple emails with them, including, we highlighted like, there's also, fair housing law that you have to sort of, be aware of when especially if you're talking about demographic sort of stuff. So, supporting people in that way. Lots of ways to plug in, reach out, ask questions, come to various events that we are involved in. We've got an events listing. So there's some stuff up there right now that we'll be at, and more coming through the course of the year. Events are always a great fun and great place to build relationships and connect in with what's happening in the larger movement. So I think that's a good base of stuff.
Absolutely. And the website's ic.org, I believe.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, hey, our mission is to co-create a voluntary natural world. We believe that's going to happen through the proliferation of sustainable and autonomous communities like intentional communities, like eco-villages. And so I'm just super grateful for your work and all the information that's available through the Fellowship for Intentional Community. And I'm very grateful for you taking the time out of your day for this interview. And we're excited for everyone to post any questions or comments. And I'm sure either you or I will get on there and make sure that those are answered.
Definitely.
But it was very thorough. So thanks again for your time. I'm so grateful, Sky.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Best of luck with the rest of your tour as well.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right. Peace.
Bye.
What to do.